Hey, I'm Courtney Waterman, your tutor. Lover of anime, manga, and math. And you just tuned into another session of Tutor Me Sempai. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're jumping into an 8th grade topic, geometric rotations. Now, if you're new to my channel, I'll be putting time codes in for this video in the description box below, so use that to skip ahead to whatever part of the video you think is most interesting. Now, at the end of this video, I'll be linking an 8th grade playlist in which I cover a lot more topics. So if you're interested in that, make sure you stay tuned. As always, if you have any questions about what you see here today or even on homework, you can always put in the comment box below or visit me on my Facebook page at Tutor Me Sempai and tell me all about it there. Today's video will have 3 parts, so leave a like, hit that subscribe, and let's get started. Similar to geometric translations and reflections, geometric rotations will not affect the size of whatever you're rotating. However, they will potentially affect the orientation and the position of whatever you're rotating. That means whatever you're rotating, let's say a graph, that graph is going to have the same shape pre and post rotation. However, it could be on its side, it could be upside down, it could be in a completely different area on your XY coordinate plane. However, the size is always going to be consistent. However, we've already talked about reflections and we've talked about translations as well, so I'm not going to recover those topics. If you missed any of those topics, no worries. I have videos on all of those topics that you can check right up there, and that is going to cover translations and reflections. So check that out so you can get a better picture of all the transformations, but we're going to be focusing on geometric rotations for this video. And in order to rotate anything, you're going to need the following 3 things. The first thing you're going to need is going to be the center of your rotation. You're going to need to know what you're rotating around. The second thing you're going to need to know is the direction in which you're supposed to rotate. The third thing you're going to need to know is going to be the degrees of your rotation. So let's break down each and every one of these a little bit more in our next section as we talk about notation for a geometric rotation. So we're going to be using this nice little visual here in order to get a better understanding of the notation and what they mean. So our notation is going to be denoted by this capital R. And we're going to have this 90 here. You see, it's going to be a little bit lower than the R. So you're not going to be writing 90 next to the R. You're going to be having this subscript here. This 90 is going to be a little subscript of this capital R. And that's going to be your degrees. You're going to be rotating 90 degrees. Here's your direction. So once again, you're not most likely going to see a plus there. You're either going to have nothing or a negative. But if I'm going to put a plus just to overemphasize this point here, this is a plus direction. Now this plus or minus is going to be whether you're going clockwise or counterclockwise. So make sure you're paying attention to whatever sign is there. And we're going to be rotating around the origin. So that is going to be our 3 things in order to rotate this point up here. So what does it mean to rotate this white point here 90 degrees in a positive direction? Now positive direction, that can be easily confused if you have nothing to anchor yourself to. Whether you're going clockwise or counterclockwise, it's something that you can easily confuse. But if you think of quadrants, it may help you understand and never forget which way you're going to be rotating. Let's say we're starting in our first quadrant here. And let's say we want to go clockwise. Clockwise means that we're going from this quadrant to this quadrant, right? And then from this quadrant to this quadrant. And then this quadrant to this quadrant. So that's the direction in which we're going. How are those numbers looking to you? So forgetting where we start, we end up here. So we go to 4, then we go to 3, then we're going to 2. And if you want to continue back to where you started, you go to 1. Are you increasing or decreasing by going in this fashion? Are we increasing or decreasing? We are decreasing, right? 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. If we're going to be traveling in a clockwise manner, we're going to be ultimately going in this fashion. 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. It's decreasing which means we should be thinking negative, right? We're going in a negative direction because we're decreasing these numbers. So clockwise should be giving you a more negative feel when you're talking about the direction you're rotating, negative. And if you want to kind of drive this point home, let's look at our counterclockwise. So counterclockwise means we're going like this, right? And forgetting where we're starting here, we're going to go 2 to 3 to 4, right? 2 to 3 to 4. Now, we do cycle, so we're also going to go back to 1. So I don't want to throw you off with that because the cycle does continue. However, you're going to be hitting this pattern here, 2 to 3 to 4. Are you increasing or decreasing when you're traveling in this fashion, in this counterclockwise fashion? Increasing or decreasing? We're increasing. And as you increase, you should be thinking positive, right? You're moving in a positive direction. So this should have a more positive feel for your direction. So that is an easy way that helped me understand and never forget how we're going to be rotating. So now that we know what our direction is supposed to be, now we have this positive 90, what is our point? We said it was supposed to be the origin, the center that we're rotating about, that origin. Well, I'm going to use this in order to help us keep track of our point of origin. We're going to be doing a counterclockwise rotation about the origin. That means all we're doing is moving from this quadrant 1 to this quadrant 2. Now we rotated this point 90 degrees counterclockwise because it's positive. How about this one? We have another notation. We're supposed to be rotating 180 degrees in a positive direction. Remember, our positive is going to be counterclockwise. So what does that look like for this point? Well, we're going to rotate this point from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2 and then continue it to quadrant 3. This means that we're going to not stop here. We have to go 180 degrees. So you see, we're no longer at the top right here. We've gone to the bottom left. Our point is now over here. So you see, we're never changing the size of our point. This point never changes size. However, the location changes, right? We've moved quadrants and the orientation. But this is what your visual is going to be for a point that's rotating positive 180 degrees. How about this one right here? We have a rotation of positive 270. Once again, counterclockwise, 270 degrees. So we're going to be rotating from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2, keep going to quadrant 3, and then we're going to keep going to quadrant 4. You see, we have to go all the way around. We don't do any shortcuts. This positive means we have to travel all the way around here. So even though we know we're going to end up here, we have to make sure we understand that we hit all the other quadrants before we end here. But we don't just have positive rotations. Remember, we have the clockwise, so we have negative rotations as well. Let's take a look at a couple of those. So we're going to do the same thing here, except now we have a negative. That means we're going to be going clockwise now. So this point here is going to rotate from quadrant 1 to quadrant 4. This is how we're supposed to rotate clockwise. Our point goes from all the way up here down here. We're rotating. This is not to be confused with a reflection. I don't want you to think that we're reflecting here. We're rotating 90 degrees clockwise. So let's say we have to do this type of rotation here, negative 180 degrees. Well, that means we have to rotate from quadrant 1 to quadrant 4 and rotate from quadrant 4 to quadrant 3. We have to rotate this way because we're rotating about the origin, right? So we're going to be rotating in this fashion. We're going to end up in quadrant 3 here. Let's say we have to rotate negative 270 degrees. Well, you're going to go from 1 to 4, keep going from 4 to 3, keep going from 3 to 2. And that's all you have to do when you're rotating these points. This is our visual representation of rotating a single point, whether it's positive or negative, clockwise or counterclockwise. However, you don't need to know necessarily both positive and negative rotations, and you may have already seen why. Let's say we have to rotate this point negative 270 degrees. Now we know We just saw it end up in quadrant 2. However, what's another way of getting something in quadrant 2? We can rotate it positive 90 degrees. If we want to end up in quadrant 2, we can rotate this point either negative 270 or a positive 90. How about we want to end up in our third quadrant from our first quadrant, rotating about the origin? What are you going to need to do? Well, we can rotate negative 180 degrees, and that should get us to this quadrant here, or we can rotate 180 degrees. Both of these put you in our third quadrant. How about if we want to end up in our fourth quadrant? We can rotate negative 90 degrees, or we can rotate 270 degrees. There are multiple ways of getting in whatever quadrant you're trying to go to, whether it's positive or negative. So as long as you know that these are going to be equivalent to each other, you don't necessarily have to remember all of these rotations. So now that we talked about the notation and we've seen our nice little visual, let's actually rotate a single point 90, 180, and 270 degrees in our counterclockwise fashion. So since this video is getting pretty long already, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, we're going to rotate a single point, and we're going to come back for another video in which I can show you how to rotate an entire graph, entire figure with multiple points. But if you can get this part down, I'm sure you can understand how to rotate something with more than one point. So we're going to rotate this point A1, which is going to be at 4, 2. And in order to rotate this, you have to understand where you currently are. These points are going to be very important when it comes to rotation. Let's say we are here. I'm going to put a little box here. This helps me rotate my little box. I'm not going to quite fill it in. We have this little box here. And you notice that this little box that we have here has something that's along the x-axis and something that's along the y-axis. We're going to pick this up. This is going to have to go this way, right? So it's going to have the long part, instead of being on the x-axis after a 90-degree rotation, the long part is going to be all the way up here, right? So it's going to be all the way here. And this smaller part is going to go down here, right? So we're actually going to have something like this once we stand it up. That means our new point is going to be right there. Or let me put it in a different color. Our new point is going to be right here. A1 is going to be A2 over here. This is going to be our new point, A2. Now, what's the value of that point, A2? A2 is going to be what? Well, it's going to be negative 2, 4, right? Negative 2, 4. So let's keep track of that. Now we want to rotate A1 180 degrees. Now, we've already found A2, so we can technically use A2 and rotate it another 90 degrees, right? That's going to be the same thing as if we rotated A1 the full 180. And we're going to do the same thing. We pick this up, right? So we're going to knock it over. Now, we're going to push this all the way down, right? So the long part now goes over here. And the short part is going to go right in here, right? We're going to be rotating this counterclockwise. So if this is going here and that's going here, that means we have something like this, right? So this is going to be our new point, which we're going to put in a different color. Let's say red here. This is going to be our A3. Notice our long part here that was along the y-axis becomes the long part here along the x-axis. And our short part here that was on the x-axis becomes our short part here along the y-axis. This forms our new rectangle, which gives us our new point. And we know our point A3 to be what? Negative 4, negative 2. Now we want to do A1 270 degrees. But that's going to be the same as doing this A3 another 90 degrees, right? Because we're ultimately going to end up right here. We've already found these intermediate points, so no point in keep doing those. So let's do the same exact thing and rotate this A3 another 90 degrees. That means this point, we're gonna keep pushing it. It's gonna go over here, and we have this small thing here, right? The small part here is gonna go right up there. So that means we're gonna have something like this, in which we need one more point, so we need one more color, and this is gonna be a brown color. You know, I didn't have too many exciting colors here, but it's gonna be a brown color here. And this is going to be our A4. And all we're doing is we're replacing this long part that was on the X to now being on the Y again, right? And the short part, which was on the Y, is now along the X. We're creating the same rectangle that we had all along. And this A4 is going to be what? What is going to be 2, -4. Now this is what it means to geometrically rotate a point 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270 degrees in a counterclockwise fashion. However, this is a lot of work, right? You don't want to have to keep drawing 4 points just to get to 270, right? You don't want to have to keep doing that. We should have a nice shortcut. Well, let's create our shortcut then. So we're starting at this A1, and we're going to be at point 42. And if we're going to rotate 90 degrees to get to A2, what are you seeing happening here? Well, we have the same 2's and 4's, right? The 4's and the 2's become 2's and the 4's. However, our X value seems to be negated. So we swapped X and Y, right? Our 4, 2 became 2, 4. And our X value, our new X value becomes negative. Our Y value is still the same +4, but our X became a negative version of what we had. So that tells us if we're starting at XY, our 90 degree rotation, that's going to be in our counterclockwise fashion, is going to do a -y x. How about going from A1 to A3? What do you have here? Well, if we start at A1 and we go to A3, we're doing a 180, right? We're going to do a counterclockwise 180 degree rotation. From point A1 to point A3, what are we getting? Well, it seems like 4, 2 is staying the same. So we have the same x, y. However, they're both negative. And how about if we went from A1 to A4? What kind of pattern do you see here? Well, that's going to be a rotation counterclockwise of 270, right? What are we going to need to do in order to get from A1 to A4? Well, we're going to have to swap, right? So we're going to have a y here again and an x here again. However, our y stays positive, but our x becomes negative, right? Y stays positive and x becomes negative now. If you remember this right here, this will save you a lot of work if you know where you're starting. It's important to know where you're starting so you can figure out how the rotation is going to manipulate this. So I hope you're following today's examples, and I hope you found that shortcut helpful. If you have any questions about what you saw today, or even your own homework, you can always put it in the comment box below, or visit me on my Facebook page at Tutor Me Sempai and tell me all about it there. If you haven't done so already, remember to leave that like. It really helps the channel by letting YouTube know that you found this video helpful. And if you found the video helpful, so can someone else. So leave a like, hit the notification bell, smash the subscribe button, and share this video with a friend. Well, that's all the time I have for today. I'm really hoping this helped with your homework, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Courtney, that's your playlist, and this has been another session of Tutor Me Sempai.